Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy, Jason. We've got some football to talk about today. Today, we've got some news that we're going to break down, and then we're going to kind of end the show after discussing the Juwan Jennings extension. Of course, we are going to talk a little bit about these Brandon AIYUK, DEEBO Samuel trade rumors, give you the official Wake and Take opinion. So make sure you stick around for that. We've got news, we've got rumors, we've got a bunch of stuff going on with today's show. So why don't you go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome in, everyone, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course you, the YouTube audience. Good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning to you, Dakota. Hope y'all are having a great morning. Hope everyone listening and tuning in right now is just having an absolutely fantastic day. This is a good Thursday. Let's get some bread today, fellas. Let's have a good one. So anyway, we've got some football today. Good morning to you, PJ. Good morning to you, Jeremy. Pleasure to see y'all this morning, as always. Let's go ahead and dive right into the news. We'll start with one of my favorite stories, and I guess I missed this. Because it seems that this has happened a bit ago, but apparently there's an assistant head coach in Las Vegas, and his name is pretty familiar. His name is Marvin Lewis. As we know, the former Bengals head coach who was there for a very long time. Very, good coach, I would say. I know he didn't have much playoff success in his career, but he did take a Bengals franchise and just total organization that was just shit. Absolute dog water, just a bad organization, poorly run from top to bottom. He took that organization and actually, kind of turned them around, brought them to the playoffs, had some divisional titles, was a very, very competitive team, really due to his expertise. Now, again, he never really found much playoff success, but he was really good at player development, especially really good on the defensive side of the ball, and has a ton of wisdom on how to run a football team. And so Marvin Lewis being Antonio Pierce's assistant head coach in Las Vegas is actually making me really, really excited about this Vegas Raiders team. I know I've already been talking about them as being a little bit of a value. I talk about Gardner Minshew, Devontae Adams, and all that stuff. Like, I think that there is some value to be had in this offense. I think they'll be fine. And then to just add another kind of layer to it with Marvin Lewis being an assistant head coach, I think that's awesome. I think that that's going to be a guy that can really help just turn this organization that is now going through a tenure with a new head coach and Antonio Pierce, as good as he was last year. You still kind of just need that extra oomph and wisdom and just all and the stuff that Marvin Lewis can bring to a team to really take that next step as an organization. And it seems they're going to be able to do that. And they also have the connections, Marvin Lewis and Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce played for the Ravens when Lewis was their defensive coordinator. And also they both worked at Arizona State together. So they already have a kind of a little bit of a kindred relationship. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm not going to lie. You guys already know I'm a sucker for head coaches. I do think that they're incredibly important. And to have a guy like Marvin Lewis, who's just very experienced, come in and help out a young head coach that's already been doing a solid job, and Antonio Pierce, I really do think that it's going to help this team and really everyone out, really from top to bottom. So let's go Antonio Pierce and Marvin Lewis with the Raiders. So anyway, that is that news. Dakota has a nice little comment here. So before we move on, says he tuned into Trade Gods last night and says, like, me and Maddie are growing into some of the best podcasters in the business. Super entertaining. Great to hear, Dakota. I really, really appreciate that. Yesterday's show was definitely a fun one. I always have a great time chopping up with Maddie. He is just so excellent. He's funny. He's witty. He's good. All of this stuff. But yeah. Thank you for the compliment, and you guys go check out last night's Trade Gods episode. It was pretty good. Do we have breaking news? I'm trying to find this. Do we have breaking news? Jaylen Waddle? Yep, just got the notification. So guys, we're gonna riff for a second here, as we just actually had some breaking news before we get to the plan show. We might as well discuss it. Mr. Waddle, the Penguin man himself, Jaylen Waddle, Miami Dolphins wide receiver, just signed a 3-year extension worth up to $84.75 million. So about a $10 million more contract higher than what Nico Collins just got in Houston. Pretty solid deal. I'm not going to lie. I think, so what's that going to work out to? A little over $3 million extra a year for Jaylen Waddle over Nico Collins. That seems about right. So yeah, I wasn't super prepared to talk about Jaylen Waddle today, but I mean, we've seen some good production from him. What do we have? I'm just going to pull up his player profiler. This will help a lot. This will help a lot. But, you know, even with Tyreek Hill there, Jaylen Waddle still has had 1,000 yards every single year in the season. He's averaged over 14 points per game every single year in the league. I mean, really everything you want to see from a wide receiver on top of his just incredible profile and high draft capital. It makes sense to go ahead and extend him here. And especially with just the wide receiver market in general, as we're going to talk about Brandon AIYUK a little bit later. I mean, these wide receivers, they get upset if they don't get extended, and they were coming up on having to choose between his 5th-year option or not pretty soon here with Waddle. So they just figured, why not just go ahead and extend him? Good move for the Dolphins. Good move for Jaylen Waddle. Go ahead and get that bag. And it's nice that it's not that long of a contract for, you know, both Jaylen Waddle and Nico Collins. Like 3 years is a decent contract, but it's nice that they get to, you know, they kind of get to save themselves too. Like after these 3 years, the wide receiver market could be even more expensive than it is right now. And, you know, both of those wide receivers are still going to be pretty young, looking for their 3rd contract now. It's just incredible how the wide receiver market has changed. But good for Waddle. I mean, that obviously shows their commitment to him. In the future, right? I mean, again, that this just makes me yet another reason to just move on from Tyreek Hill. I don't get it. I don't get his value right now. As awesome as Tyreek Hill, again, I don't think he should be a top 12 dynasty wide receiver at 30 years old. I just don't care. There's so many good young wide receivers that I don't get it. I just don't get it. But you know, to each their own. Either way, Jaylen Waddle, good contract, good for the Dolphins, good for him. And yeah, just shows their commitment. I mean, what else do you want, right? What else do you want? So there we go. That's a little bit of a breaking news story here on Wake and Take. Let's go ahead and go to the non-breaking news, the news that I had been ready for. And this is just some OTA hype for the next few players. This one is Jaden Reed. Packers corner Jair Alexander has spoken volumes about Jaden Reed and what he sees in him. And this is what he said. I mean, he has full potential. He reminds me of a young Randall Cobb, but he's, I think, better. He's hungry, and when you got a young guy coming in who's hungry for the ball, they're going to make their plays, and you see it. And he's right. Last year, Jaden Reed, I believe, was 5th in touchdowns last year amongst wide receivers with 10 total touchdowns. He had almost 800 yards. He had 8 receiving touchdowns, and this came in a rookie season in a pretty decently crowded wide receiver room. So I mean, we can all expect Jaden Reed to have an even better season next year. Some of his metrics as well. I mean, he was top 10 in QB rating per target, fantasy points per route run, fantasy points per target. A number of things really that he was at least top 20 in. Just a really solid year for Jaden Reed, and to hear the praise from Jair Alexander calling him a young Randall Cobb, I mean, that's just excellent news. That's a Packers great, really solid wide receiver his entire career. Even in his twilight years, we were still rostering him in some of our deeper leagues. So Jaden Reed, you know, looking good, getting some high praise. We've already seen the production, but just to hear the extra praise from some teammates, I know teammates say these things a lot, as we're about to talk about with the next player, but I buy this hype a little bit more than I do the next player. I think that Jaden Reed has shown a lot on the football field on top of just being a hard worker, the draft capital, all this stuff. Jaden Reed, I think, is an easy hit. Awesome wide receiver for the Packers. Now, the next bit of hype we have for you guys revolves around Treylon Burks, and this is obviously different. Instead of hype, we'll just call this propaganda. I think that is a little bit more fitting for the Treylon Burks hype right now. I think it's more so propaganda just because we've not seen anything from him. Last year, only 200 receiving yards and no touchdowns. In his rookie season, he had 400 receiving yards and only 1 touchdown. So the fact he got worse in his second season is concerning. And in both years, he's only played in 11 games, just struggled to stay healthy. So, I mean, we have a little bit of like, oh, maybe if he stays healthy, it could be good, but probably not. However, you know, Calvin Ridley, his new teammate, is very excited about what could happen with Treylon Burks. Here's what he had to say. Calvin Ridley said, "What I see, he's like Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Terrell Owens. Dude's that big and that fast. He's a stud. You don't have to worry about him. That dude is a freak. He's going to be a stud. There's no worries." Earlier in May, Callahan had come out and said that Burks is going to play everything, and that at this point in the offseason, all of the work that he's put in has been really impressive. Burks went on to say that he likes the fit in the offense Callahan has brought with him, comparing it to his system that he ran in Arkansas when he was really productive in college. He said, "It's fun, fast, where I'm similar to what I did in college. So I've just got to continue to study and get better and have fun with it." He also just said that right now he feels healthy. He thinks that he's having fun. He said he can't be more blessed. He said his confidence feels through the roof right now. And then Calvin Ridley went back on to say that he just has to learn how to slow the game now. And he'll be fine. So we'll see. I mean, again, Treylon Burks was a wide receiver 2 years ago now, where going into the process. Now, this was pre-combine. This was when this was the film bros, the analytics dudes, everyone before the combine was so in on Treylon Burks, saying the same things that Calvin Ridley was saying, that he's going to be the next Julio Jones, next Terrell Owens, all of this stuff, just an athletic freak with some solid college production. I mean, he had a 92nd percentile college dominator, a 31.3% college target share, which was the 92nd percentile, and he's 6'2", 240 or 24 pounds. Got the first round draft capital, was young, played in the SEC, has a decent arm length in the 91st percentile with 33 inches. Like, really everything you'd think you want in a wide receiver. So in our pre-combine rookie drafts, Treylon Burks was going, first overall over Breece Hall, right? Over Kenneth Walker, over Chris Olave, over Garrett Wilson. It was an interesting year, to say the least, when it revolved around the Treylon Burks hype. But then the combine came around and he really didn't do that well. He only ran a 4.55. His speed score is still pretty good because of his size, but really all of his workout metrics outside of his size-adjusted speed score is around the 50th percentile or worse, which isn't bad. Again, I do bring up the point, guys, that these percentiles on PlayerProfiler.com, as hopeful as they are, in comparison to world-class athletes. So to still be in the 50th percentile of a workout metric is not bad. That's still saying you are average or above average in the NFL, world-class athletes. Like, you're still a very, very athletic player, even if you're only in the 50th percentile for some of these workout metrics. And that's why when you see the 98th percentiles and higher and stuff like that, that's where you can really, really find some impressive athletes in the NFL. But even that, the guys that are average are still just so athletic and would make us just crumble. Like if we ever tried to compare ourselves to what they were doing. But either way, if Treylon Burks can stay healthy and, just work on everything, we could see a later breakout from him. I'm not necessarily going to bet on it, but if you do, it's not like you really lose that much value, because as we go to continue to talk about the Titans here in a little bit, this offense is going to be improved. And the weapons in front of him, I would argue that right now Treylon Burks is the wide receiver 4 on the Titans. I think that Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Boyd are probably ahead of him on the depth chart right now. But, given their age and given their health, history, there is going to be some times here where Treylon Burks is at least the wide receiver 3. And there's a potential that he becomes the wide receiver 2 on this offense. And like we've been saying time and time again this offseason, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So I do like this offensive fit for wide receivers on the Titans. So a cheap swing on a young prospect like Treylon Burks is not the worst idea in the world. I mean, again, going back to just a couple years ago, going into his rookie season, the hype for him was absolutely through the roof. And this is now a system that could potentially work for him. If anything, though, I would say that, while this is year 3, I don't think I'm betting on a year 3 breakout for him. If anything, maybe year 4 with DeAndre Hopkins gone, he can maybe take a role in this offense and have something. But I do not believe, and it's starting to kind of make sense, right? We all believed Mike Vrabel was a good coach. And I mean, he was a good coach, right? But it seems that he wasn't that great at developing players. I mean, genuinely, if you look around this Titans roster in the time that Mike Vrabel was a big part of it, did anyone pan out? I asked that seriously. Like, even on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like the only players that panned out were traded, right? So I think that Mike Vrabel wasn't great at player development. They didn't have great wide receiver coaches in Tennessee. We've seen terrible wide receiver production really the last couple seasons. We've been blaming it on quarterback play, but it could just be a developmental issue as well. With Callahan coming in, just a new system in general, I do think that Treylon Burks could start to progress, especially with being able to learn from some of these veterans that are now ahead of him. Again, I think my official stance on Treylon Burks is if we ever see a breakout, I think it might be 2025 unless injuries happen. I think that this is going to be a very big learning year for Burks and then being able to see what he could do. But the good news is he's still only 24, which means he's only going to be 25 next season. where the field could open up a bit more for him. Tyler Boyd gone, DeAndre Hopkins gone, Will Levis hopefully, kind of growing as a passer. Then we could hopefully see some Treylon Burks action. We'll see, right? But it is looking more and more likely that he was the bust of this draft class, with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave already hitting, with Jamison Williams trending towards hitting, with Jahan Dotson already having the breakout rookie season. It's looking like Burks was the first round bust, but I would say there's still some potential for him to right the ship. Again, probably not betting on it, but why not? Also, at the same time, it's not like he's that expensive. I feel like you could probably get Burks for a 4th round pick right now, or, for nothing, right? So if you have the space, I guess, and I might actually be presented with this decision, the decision of putting Treylon Burks on our roster here shortly in the Wake and Take Invitational League, as it's looking like he might be there for my pick. And I could use a wide receiver. So I don't know. Overall, I don't know. To be completely honest, this is just such a tough one. Again, the hype was just through the roof for this player, and it's a profile we all like, and it's now becoming a system that I think we can all get behind. So I think the potential is okay, right? Yeah. I'm going to change my stance. I am betting on it at his price, but I'm not like betting on it actually happening, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I will be trading for Treylon Burks at his price based on this hype. However, I don't know if I'm very confident he ever will actually break out. Again, I think if anything, it might have to be 25 when some of these vets kind of get out of the way. He uses this year to learn. I think it does make some sense. I think I've painted a picture to where we can expect at least a little bit of a bounce back from Treylon Burks, maybe 500 yards, right? Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe we can go with like some 500 yards or so. Let's check in the chat though. Let's see. No one about. Oh, wait, here we go. If you had to guess, where do you think Burks will finish in the realm of wide receivers? I'd be willing to bet that he finishes around the wide receiver 40 mark by the end of the year. I don't know if I'd go that high, which is just crazy to say, really. I still think like probably wide receiver 60 range next year. But again, I am starting to kind of paint a picture here where I could see, a solid 2025 from him. Let me double check. I am pretty sure that DeAndre Hopkins was only a 2-year deal, but let me double check. I think that this is it. Yeah, it was a 2-year deal. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins gone after this season. Tyler Boyd, I believe, was a 1-year deal, but that might have been 2 or 3, honestly, with his situation. No, yeah, it was a 1-year, $2 million contract with the Titans for Tyler Boyd as well. So I mean, the next year, Treylon Burks is probably going to be the wide receiver too. So there we go. I've said it. Probably don't expect this much this season. But, it's looking like in 2025, he might still be, he might actually get an opportunity here. It is probably a trap. PJ Kennedy, you're probably right. But, it's okay. Like, I say this a lot. It's okay to fall for traps if you don't give up anything. Like, this is just a bottom of the barrel player. Like, it's like you're not really getting burned if you trade for Treylon Burks and he doesn't pan out. Like, it's one of those swings that it's not that bad of a deal to make. So I don't mind doing it. But yes, it's probably a trap. Like, I'm not coming here and saying like, oh, I'm hugely confident in Treylon Burks, but like, it's okay to take some swings and misses sometimes in Dynasty. Like, it's just fine. Like, we all do it, right? So why not, right? Why not? It's a hard sport to predict. We'll see what happens. Again, I probably think it'll be 2025, but there's some potential here for Mr. Burks. Anyway, another player getting some hype out of camp right now is Malachi Corley. Here's what was said about him. Teammate Garrett Wilson said he's a brute. Once he catches the ball, he's got great instinct of where the defense is going to be and how to make someone miss. Just like I was saying, he can go over the middle, take hits. I'm excited to see him run with the ball once we've got pads on, because I know I wouldn't be trying to tackle him. He looks like a problem, a little bowling ball out there. So I'm excited. That's awesome, because Aaron Rodgers then went on to say, I love who we brought in. Malachi was my favorite receiver in the draft. He might not have been the best on paper, but I really felt that he would fit in with what we're trying to do with his mindset and ferocity. So I enjoyed bringing him in. So Aaron Rodgers, of course, we already know he invited him to the pool house, but now we get the favorite receiver in the draft narrative from him as well. And then, of course, Garrett Wilson saying what we already know about him, that essentially he's a bowling ball, an incredible, incredible player after the catch. So I would say, going to be honest here, it's sounding like he will be pretty solid this year if they are utilizing him correctly. Now, it sounds like, again, the big deal with Corley is how much volume is he going to get? Garrett Wilson demands a ton of volume. Breece Hall demands a ton of volume. Mike Williams, if he can stay healthy, does demand a decent bit of volume. I'm not going to lie. And Tyler Conklin, while not a great ceiling, has demonstrated that he's got a solid enough floor for like 5 or 6 targets a game. So Malachi Corley isn't looking at a ton of volume, but that doesn't necessarily matter for a player that's a YAC guy. Now, I'm not expecting a ton of fantasy production as a rookie for him. I would assume it's more likely to be the DEEBO Samuel career path where he starts off a little slow and then kind of breaks into an all-star, if anything. But it's going to be, I do think that there's some good potential here for Malachi Corley. Really good production in college, solid at the Senior Bowl, and more than just a YAC guy. I remember speaking to him, and he actually complained about his usage in college, said he wanted to do more than just the YAC stuff. He says he feels that he has a complete route tree. He says he wants to do more than just catch screen passes. So I just think that's awesome. If he could stay healthy, I do think he's definitely a really good player. I'm just more concerned about what type of volume he can get. But if he can get like 10 touches a game, I think that could be nice. I just think right now, at least as a rookie, he's probably settling somewhere around 5 targets a game or 5 touches to 7 touches a game or something like that, which is not bad. And he, of course, could have some spike weeks with that. But we'll have to, like, it's just, I don't know. But, you know, his value is not too expensive either. Like, you can get him in the 3rd round of our rookie drafts, which is not too bad, of course. And then you can get him pretty late in the best ball as well. So, you know, it's again, like Treylon, not as cheap as Treylon Burks, but I don't mind taking the swing on him, especially with my 3rd round rookie picks. If he can earn some good volume on this offense, I think he could be good. My only concern, of course, is what the hell are the Jets going to do after Aaron Rodgers? But I guess we'll find that out next season. But either way, looking good. Hearing lots of hype about Malachi Corley. That's very exciting. And the last bit of OTA news comes from Taysom Hill, as his usage is kind of evolving in the Saints offense. In new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak's scheme, Hill is adding more backfield work to his repertoire, taking handoffs and lining up in fullback role during OTAs. Hill said it's been a lot of fun. It's weird to say after 7 years of what I've been doing and what I've been asked to do, what the hell? It's weird to say after 7 years of doing what I've been doing that I'm being asked to do things I've never done before. This is exciting to me and it's challenging. I love to be challenged like that. I'm grateful for those guys creating unique and fun opportunities for me. According to reporters at off-season workouts, Hill has been used as a shotgun running back and a lead blocker as a foldback, along with his tight end duties. The more we can do, the better and harder it is, Hill said. And it goes on, the article, the Saints haven't ruled out using Hill as a passing threat, but it seems clear that his main usage will be as a runner and pass-catching weapon. So it's looking like he's going to have the tight end positional value this year. And yeah, it is looking like he's probably not going to be used much as a passer next season, really at all. Which is probably a good thing. I think we're all tired of it, to be completely honest with you. As fun as it has been, kind of being able to trick ourselves into getting excited about Taysom Hill, he's also just been incredibly frustrating to manage in managed leagues. It's just hard. So I'm not going to be drafting Taysom Hill, probably, even if he is utilized a lot. Like, I'm just not going to get excited about this. It just, like, we're talking about a gadgety player here who's just getting older and older and older, and his system continues to change. And it sounds like they don't want to use him as a passer, which was kind of the extra excitement of him. Yes, he is exciting to watch, Dakota. I don't mean to say that. I just mean, like, it's like he'll score those 40 points and you're like, all right, locking him into my roster for next week, and then he scores 0. Like, it's just so frustrating. I hate it. And to hear that he's not going to have much of that passing ceiling next year, I think I'm just out. I think I'll just take a chance on a tight end, like an actual tight end, right? But yeah, like I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll have some spike weeks again. Like, he is Taysom Hill. He's fun to watch. He is talented, but to me, just frustrating. And I don't like frustrating players on my managed rosters. We have some more news about the Titans running back room. I'm just going to continue pounding the table for this because I think a lot of people are fading the Titans backfield, and I just think it is a terrible, terrible decision to do that. Both Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears are incredibly, incredibly cheap right now. I am taking as many swings on those players as I can. Listen to what Callahan had to say about the running back room.
Their skills complementing each other, maybe their personalities as well.
Yeah, they are definitely different personalities. Tony's a lot quieter. Tajae's got a lot more natural energy, but they both practice really hard, which is great. But those guys have, I can't wait to start playing around and using them in different ways because they both do things differently, but they're unique. That Tony's got great acceleration and great explosiveness with the ball in his hands. Tajay does too. Tajay's got a little really great short area quickness. So anytime we can find ways to match those guys up in the passing game on linebackers is a huge benefit for us. They're hard to cover. They can run routes like receivers, which is unique. I've not seen guys like them very often, and we have two of them. They can line up out wide and run a route tree like a receiver can, and they catch naturally, which is exciting. I'm fired up to see how they run with the ball in our scheme. We again with no pads on, it's hard to really tell, but I'm excited about the style that we can run with. We can do a lot of different things. We can run from the gun. We can run on the perimeter because they got enough speed, and they're both tough enough and physical enough to run in between the tackles. And so, again, I've said it before, but I'm really excited about what those guys can bring to our offense.
Yeah, so I don't know what else you need to hear, guys. Like, genuinely, I have no idea what else you need to hear from a head coach about potential usage of a running back. The fact that we are about to watch a backfield that is probably a very even 50-50 split between two incredibly elusive pass-catching running backs, that is screaming value in PPR leagues. I would not be surprised if both Pollard and Spears average 5 receptions a game. They are going to be utilizing that running back position out of the backfield time and time again. We've seen Joe Mixon excel as a pass catcher in his career. We saw Chase Brown start to do it a little bit last year. We saw Samaje Perine in the Bengals offense 2 years ago doing this. We saw even Chris Evans do it a little bit a few seasons ago. Like, we have always seen pass catching running backs succeed on the Callahan offense in Cincinnati. I'm very, very excited to see it now in Tennessee as they have some actual, like, true pass catching running backs in Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. And again, I say we need to remember how good Tony Pollard was 2 years ago, because he was a top 5 dynasty running back. People were doing whatever they could to get him on their rosters. He was incredibly explosive. He was incredibly efficient. And then, unfortunately, he got injured and was not able to produce that same efficiency next season as he was recovering from an injury. But fun fact, if you go over to PlayerProfiler.com and you go type in Tony Pollard, and you go look at his game logs from last season, you'll find that when he got healthy, Tony Pollard was himself again. From weeks 11 onward, here were Tony Pollard's point totals: 18, 22, 17, 16, 8, 5, 6, 16, 21. So, whatever. He had a few dud weeks, but of course he started to produce that ceiling again at a very consistent rate. He still finished last season with over 1,300 total yards, had 6 touchdowns. So I'm very, very excited to see what he could do next year. And we already talked about Tyjae Spears. He was incredible last year too. In breakaway runs, yards after catch, everything. Really, Tyjae Spears was keeping Derrick Henry off the field. So this is just an incredible backfield. I want them both. There's going to be interchangeable weeks. And if one of them gets injured, we are talking about incredible contingent upside on either one. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's just this backfield needs to be rostered in dynasty leagues, in redraft leagues, of best ball especially. Like, these guys are going to be good. They're going to be consistent. And I'm very excited for what they'll bring to this offense as a whole. And again, just excited for this Titans offense. I really think there's some value to be had here right now, from Will Levis to DeAndre Hopkins to the running back room, maybe even Chigakonkwo. And we talked about Burks a little bit too, maybe even him. And I will continue to say Tyler Boyd as well for you competitive teams, for you guys don't minding rostering these older players. I do think Tyler Boyd is in for a pretty solid year, given his connections with head coach Callahan from Cincinnati. I think he will be utilized pretty heavily in the slot. And again, I expect them to pass the ball so much because they can't really run the ball with these running backs. Like, there's going to be a lot of passes. There's going to be a lot of passes, and there's going to be a lot of catches. Let's go Tennessee Titans. Lots of value to be had there. GDLT says Dylan Johnson, biggest running back in backfield. That is a great point, and that is why I said in our undrafted free agent episode to probably roster Dylan Johnson. He does have some dog in him. He played through his injury in the national championship, was pretty successful last year as a whole with Washington. I do think he could be solid. Yes, he doesn't have world-class athleticism, but, he's fine. He was productive in college. He was good enough. So, I like the little Dylan Johnson call as well. So let's go ahead and move on to the injury news before we start talking the San Francisco 49ers trade rumors. In terms of injuries, we'll keep it quick. Breece Hall. So this sucks, but it's undisclosed. which means it's probably not that big of a deal, but we'll hopefully learn more. Or actually, hopefully we don't learn more. Hopefully, like, this is it. Hopefully it just stays undisclosed and it was just a weird day. But yesterday, Breece Hall was seen working with trainers in the kind of rehabilitation area of practice, was not working out with doing the full team drills and everything. So it appears that he was injured. It's totally undisclosed. We do not know what's going on with Breece Hall right now. But the fact that he was at least like putting in work with the trainers and not like, getting carted off and all that stuff, probably fine. Yesterday, though, Xavier Legette was sidelined with a hamstring injury, not practicing at all. However, again, this also seems more precautionary, which is probably going to be the case with a lot of these OTA injuries because they're voluntary. They don't want to push their players too much. And so anyway, that is what Dave Canales said. He said this was just a precaution. I think this is what happens with a lot of rookies. They come out here and it's just a different level of work. And it's not that they haven't practiced this long, but just everyone's faster, everyone's going, everyone's stronger. And of course, their wheels are turning. There's a strain on the brain and the body. So for him, he just kind of looked a little bit stoved up. And just as a precaution, we figured that we could pull him back a little bit and just make sure that we stay smart throughout this training camp. So I would say for both of these injuries, don't overreact yet. We'll see what happens when it comes to Xavier Legette and Breece Hall. Which leads us to the final bit of news today, and that is the San Francisco 49ers, as one of our commenters has pointed out, Jauan Jennings has been extended. Jauan Jennings signed it is essentially a 1-year extension, but it is technically termed as a 2-year. He was offered the restricted free agent tender earlier this offseason, but hadn't signed it yet and was not present at OTAs as a result. With this extension, it is a 2-year extension, but really, of course, covering the year that the restricted free agent tender would have, and then, of course, next season. So really, it's just an extra 1 year for Jauan Jennings on the San Francisco 49ers. $10 million of it is guaranteed, which is just wild for this player, who has really just been kind of just a producer when asked. And the contract itself is worth up to 15 if he can get some of the incentives. Now, the big deal here is that Jauan Jennings is a rookie from the same class as Brandon AIYUK. So Brandon AIYUK is sitting out trying to get a contract, and a guy in basically the same exact situation, drafted by the same team in the same year at the same position, just got his extension. Now, of course, a much cheaper one, but it's concerning for him, especially with Jaylen Waddle now getting extended this morning, with Nico Collins getting extended this week, with, I'm sure, much more coming out as well as the draft pick of Jacob Cowing, the draft pick of Ricky Pearsall. It suggests that the 49ers don't expect this wide receiver room to stay intact. So, Jason, who's going to be traded? What's the deal here? A lot of people are suggesting that it's going to be DEEBO Samuel, and a lot of people are suggesting it's going to be Brandon AIYUK. So let's go ahead and take a look into the San Francisco 49ers situation. First off, and most importantly, right now, both DEEBO Samuel and Brandon AIYUK are under contract. Brandon AIYUK is slated to play under his 5th-year option for about $16 million. DEEBO Samuel is under contract for the next 2 seasons through 2025, and is already at OTAs, is slated to make a ton of money over the next 2 seasons, and all this stuff. And the big deal here is DEEBO is the 2nd highest paid San Francisco 49er, already under contract, already present at camps. So I don't really expect DEEBO Samuel to be moved this season. I can't paint a picture where that would happen. DEEBO Samuel is 28 years old, already present at camp, already under contract, pretty handsomely paid, expected to make over $40 million over the next 2 seasons. I can't paint. I'm not going to lie. I tried my best as a DEEBO Samuel fanboy to think of a way that he's traded from the 49ers this year, but I just can't see it. Lots of times teams do not like to trade for wide receivers or players really under contract in general, and especially a 28-year-old wide receiver who doesn't want to do his running back usage really, expected to be paid over $20 million each year over the next 2 seasons. I can't expect an NFL team to want to take that contract on with that old of a wide receiver. I just don't see it happening. If I see it happening, I would expect it to be next year where there's only 1 year left on his contract, and it could be served as like a 1-year rental, similar to what the Texans are doing with Stephon Diggs right now. But I don't really see it happening this season. If the San Francisco 49ers are looking to move on a wide receiver this year, this offseason, it's gonna be Brandon Ayuk again. He's slated to play on his 5th-year option, so there's no long-term contract on him right now. He's only 26 years old, and he has been pretty productive. So if anyone is going to move on, it's going to be Brandon Ayuk this season. This is what ESPN's Jeremy Fowler had to say. They've been talking and negotiating. Nothing is imminent as of yet, but there's certainly a chance. I was told the benchmark is Amon-Ra St. Brown because he got $28 million per year on a 4-year deal. The goal, as it appears, is for Ayuk to try to beat that. He doesn't need to be the highest paid in the league, but he's done enough and accomplished enough in that offense where he's probably going to need to be at that, around that number. Of course, we also saw Brandon Ayuk post to his Instagram story earlier this offseason, money talks, bullshit walks. And we also know he has been holding out, not at OTAs, while he's been trying to get this contract extension. So now we're talking about a younger player, 26, playing on a 5th-year option with no long-term contract, sitting out, not volunteering, doing all these things, looking for a trade. That sounds like a trade is probably going to happen to me, guys. That's what it sounds like to me. I definitely can very much expect an NFL team to go trade for a younger wide receiver without a long-term contract much easier than they would trade for a 28-year-old wide receiver already under contract and already under an expensive contract at that. And also, in terms of Brandon Ayuk, he has done nothing close to deserving $28 million per year like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are just two totally different career paths. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 119 targets as a rookie. Brandon Ayuk hasn't even had 119 targets. Like, what is this about? Amon-Ra St. Brown had over 900 yards as a rookie. It took Brandon Ayuk 3 years to be able to do that. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. Brandon Ayuk hasn't done that. Like, it's comparing yourself to Amon-Ra St. Brown if you're Brandon Ayuk is just stupid. I don't get it. You don't deserve that amount of contract money. It's just I don't get it. I don't get it. 1st round draft capital, only 26, solid enough production, 1,300 yards last year, 1,000 yards before that, no long-term contract, not present at camp. That's a player that's easy to trade away if you're the San Francisco 49ers, especially with now extending Juwan Jennings, especially with drafting Ricky Pearsall in the 1st round. A player who, albeit, probably fits Ayuk's role a bit more than DEEBO Samuel, says GLT. If they wanted to replace DEEBO Samuel, they probably would have drafted Malachi Corley. But I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that. You know, I don't know. But either way, I think if a 49ers player is traded this offseason, it's going to be Brandon Ayuk. But we have some more information coming from general manager John Lynch. And this was from May 2nd, so earlier this month. So things have probably become a little bit dated. But either way, John Lynch said, "I'm doing everything in my power to keep our roster together. That's my goal, and I don't question that." When you talk about guys like Brandon Ayuk and DEEBO, those are guys that we drafted and take a lot of pride in what they've become and who they've become. We couldn't be more proud of those guys. And so during the course of drafts and offseason, do conversations happen? Absolutely. But we're past that now. We are thrilled to just add to the group. ESPN's Nick Wagner also reported around that time that a deal doesn't appear to be imminent, but the 49ers remain confident something will get done to keep Ayuk for the long haul. And if you look at DEEBO Samuel's contract stuff, if you look at George Kittle's contract stuff, their negotiations did go through the summer even, and it was very, very similar to this. So the 49ers have historically kind of taken their time to do the extension. So it sounds like also there's still a world where the 49ers do extend Brandon Ayuk, which then, of course, brings me back to the point they only have $6 million in cap space, so I have no idea how they would pull it off, right? So again, I really do think that Brandon Ayuk is probably going to be traded. No idea to who, but it's just he doesn't deserve Amon-Ra St. Brown money. We already see here in the chat, pointing out a few things. GDLT, Ayuk and Shanahan have never been on the same page. He was in the doghouse a few seasons ago. I do remember that. I remember all of us as fantasy managers like, why is Ayuk not getting the usage? That was DEEBO Samuel's huge year. Either way, it is just trending towards these two sides just not agreeing. Just not agreeing. And so when that happens, I do just think again, DEEBO Samuel's under contract. He's older and present, right? So I don't know why the 49ers would move on from him at all. I genuinely cannot think of a single reason why the 49ers would move on from DEEBO Samuel this season at all. I can't. I can think of a number of reasons why Brandon Ayuk would be traded, and I've already listed them off. He's still young. He doesn't have a long-term contract. He has been productive. He wants more money than he deserves, and he is not present with the team right now. Those are all things that point towards a player that does not belong in an organization, a player that will probably be traded. So I would say, if you can, move on from Brandon Ayuk, really, unless you really believe that he's going to be traded somewhere very important. But I honestly, looking at all the potential landing spots right now, unless it's like the Chargers and maybe the Bills could be interesting, but like there's really not that many. The Cowboys could be cool, maybe wide receiver 2 behind CD. But either way, I don't know. Like I don't know if Brandon Ayuk really has a path to being a true alpha this season. Like I don't really know where he could go. So anyway. That's the situation as I see it. If anyone's going to be traded this season, it's Brandon Ayuk. But again, there's still, I mean, like he is still technically under contract. So there's a world where, Brandon Ayuk just shuts up and plays too. So this is a situation that's developing. If I had to make a choice right now, I would say that Brandon Ayuk will be traded. But, that I would probably put my confidence at like 55% on that, right? Like, again, they're still technically under contract, right? DEEBO Samuel's there. So I think DEEBO Samuel's a 49er this season. I would throw all of those rumors out the window about DEEBO Samuel. If it's anyone, it's going to be Brandon Ayuk. But yeah, PJ Kennedy says trade him right now if you have him in your dynasty league. I agree. I think, again, I talk about this all the time. The wide receiver position, fantasy football, is so goddamn deep. Trade Brandon Ayuk. You could get so many good wide receivers for him. Let's check it out, guys. In fact, I'll just go ahead and give you proper advice. We'll go to keeptradecut.com right now, and then we'll end the show. If we filter by wide receivers, go to Brandon Ayuk. This is what you should be doing if you have Brandon Ayuk right now. He is right next to Devontae Smith. So if you could do an even swap, do it. If you could swap him for Michael Pittman, do it. If you could swap him for Nico Collins, do it. DJ Moore, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, Jaden Reed. Probably just stay with the 49ers and get DEEBO Samuel plus. You could go for some win now receivers. And Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, D-Hop. Christian Watson, he's gaining some hype right now. My guy, Jamison Williams, he's gaining some hype right now. Marquise Brown, right? Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin. The list really does go on and on how many wide receivers you could tier down for with Brandon Ayuk. And you could also just use him to tier up. Like there is probably a world where you could trade Brandon Ayuk and a first and get like Marvin Harrison Jr. maybe in the right league. You might have to give a little bit more than that. But that, you know what I'm saying, right? Like you can upgrade here too with him. The world is your oyster when it comes to Brandon Ayuk. And with the position as deep as wide receiver, I don't see why you would roster a player like that. I would just try to take a swing somewhere else and really shore up the rest of my roster with some value that you can gain from a player with such an uncertain situation. And even if he's out there, it's a guy that isn't even at camp. So if he does return to the 49ers, he's probably not going to be a massive part of the game plan, at least early. He's not going to have worked with everyone. I know he's obviously been with the team for years, but like still, like it's just like all of these things matter and they do add up at the end of the day. So that is the situation as I see it in San Francisco. And I believe I did a pretty solid job answering questions as we went through. So yeah, I think that we will go ahead and wrap up here. I see one question on Instagram. Should we hope Treylon Burks gets traded, or is it better as a crowded older wide receiver core room? Yeah, I think I'm fine with him being in Tennessee right now. I mean, like, yes, if he's traded, that's probably good. But I don't know if it's really a scenery thing. I think technically you could already say that this Titans, organizational shift is already a scenery change. So I would like to see what he can learn from these veterans. I would like to see what he can learn from this pass-happy offense and coach and coordinator and all this stuff before I'm like, let's trade him away and see what he could do for like the Cowboys. Like, I don't know. I don't want him to have to start anew. I think he's fine here in Tennessee. I think he just needs to, put his head on straight a little bit more and put in the work this offseason, which it sounds like he will. So anyway, that should do it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is another fun episode of Wake and Take. And you guys were a fantastic audience as always. I hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast version, the link is in the description for the Wake and Take podcast. Go check that out. And of course, you can follow me on social media wherever: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit at JFootballWine. Go find me there, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Have a terrific Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.